welcome Jordan Scott, who's the University of Winnipeg's writer-in-residence at the current time, and also someone I know from having done my studies in the University of Calgary. So it's really nice to see you again, Jordan. And the class that I'm kind of teaching right now is I'm teaching some poems from one of your older books now, Blurt. It was a new book when kind of you and I met, but now, you've done a lot of things since then. So maybe we can get into some of that more recent work. But I'd like to maybe just start with you perhaps reading from Blurt, like those couple poems that my one class is studying right now. And then maybe we can talk a little bit about the process of those poems. And if anyone wants to jump in with a question, please feel free. But otherwise, I've got some prepared questions that students have given me, or that just things I've been meaning to talk to you about and haven't got around to yet. But thanks for coming, and nice to have you. Nice to see you again.
And you too. I really appreciate this. It's nice to see you too. I don't remember the last time we've seen each other. I was trying to remember that this morning, but it's been a while. So thanks for having me. I'll start with, as you requested there, I'll start with reading from 2 cheeseburgers, French fries, and a Coke. And then I'll read maybe a or 4 chomp sets from the book Blurt. This is 2 cheeseburgers, French fries, and a Coke. Twaddle, Tweedledee, Twas, Twayblade, Tweedledum, Twat, Tweezers, Twinkletoad, Twig, 12-gauged, twin-engined, Twix, Twizzles, Ziz, Zag, Zohar, Zone, Zola, Zoo, Zonked, Suit, 2. Oolong, oof, oodles, oort, oozy, oopsie-daisy, eerie, eelworm, eek, ajit, eel grass, eel pout, enzy, chi, cheekbone, cheek, cheerful, cheeky, yearly, yeasty, cheese, sea cow, sea lily, seamy seamstress, sea lion, sea lettuce, sea potato, sea moth, sea holly, sea gooseberry, sea dog, sea nettle, sea elephant, sea beer, beetle, the bee's knees, beef, FBI, FBA, FB, bird, beef, Burberry, burgers, SSB, SSC, SSE, SSP, SSR, SST, SSW, WWF, furry, fernicle, seal, leer, leak, leech, charborough, cha-cha, puff, French bean, French Congo, French bread, French cricket, French curve, French dressing, French hiccup, hibachi, hickey, hide and seek, high, high, fry, friendly fire, freedom, fire, prize, SS, SSAFA, ARG, Ardwolf, and Landers, and a banana, and D, I'm D, DA, A53 5 A, Alberg, Aardvark, Kakabeek, Kakapants, Kaka, AK, Akbar, Akimbo, Coco Cabana, Cockspur, Cockeyed Bob, Coconut Palm, Cock Up, Cocksucker, Cock and Bull, Cock Block, Cockatoo, Cock of the Walk, Cockpit, Cochlea, Cock a leaky, cockeyed, Cocoa, Oak Tag, Oak, Oakham, OPEC, KKK, Kokanee, Cocoa, Kit Kat, Coke. All right, so that's 2 cheeseburgers.
It's my
And
favorite book from in that book.
yeah,
Yeah, I love it.
yeah, thanks a lot.
Before you
Let's
read the other
see.
one, could you talk just a little
Yeah,
bit about,
sure.
a little bit more about what that book is and a little bit about your process of writing it?
Yeah, so um, in my first book of poetry, Silt, which was I think like 2005 or something, I had written a brief poem in there about stuttering, and it was mostly like an I guess ecological kind of solidarity between stuttering and ecology. It was something I was interested at the time, and one of my professors suggested that perhaps I write a whole book on the poetics of stuttering. So that really got me kind of thinking about what a book like that would look like and sound like. So essentially, Blurt is my attempt to kind of create a stutter in the language system itself. So essentially, not being satisfied with the usual ways that the stutter is represented in poetry and literature, which there's kind of 2 common representations. Either it's like the Porky, Porky the pig kind of graphic representation of the stutter, which is kind of a syllabic repetition. So like, that T hyphen T hyphen T hyphen, that's all, folks, right? And the other way is sort of a kind of metaphoric a discussion of the stutter in poetry and literature, where the stutter is just kind of used to describe something, like the leaves on the trees stuttered, something like this. So I just wondered what it would kind of be to have my own symptoms as the as the, I guess, agents of composition. So what I did is I spent a lot of time kind of studying my own stutter, how it works. All stutters are different. So I spent some time figuring out which words are the hardest for me to say, which sounds are difficult, and I read the dictionary and I made a list of all those words that are hard for me to say, and then I used that as a a constraint to write this book, where essentially I was composing it to be as difficult as possible for me to say. And at the same time, I was sort of exploring, I guess, other parts of stuttering that I found have perhaps some generative connections to poetry itself. So one of those that I was exploring in that two cheeseburger poems was just essentially like circumlocution, where stutterers often have, well, speaking for me anyway, I kind of stack up a lot of vocabulary just in case I get stuck on a word. I can kind of I'd be able to adapt really quickly to find a different way of saying the same thing, to kind of, I guess, ease my stutter a little bit. So I began exploring those types of symptoms as well that I found would be really interesting in a poetic sense. So that's what that two cheeseburger poem is. Kind of came from the, a dread I used to feel when I was a teenager, driving with my friends in the suburbs, and then kind of pulling up to McDonald's and having to order, and just being like really just so freaked out of having to speak into that, into that speaker, and stutter my way through it. So that's just essentially, that poem is just kind of an exhaustive process of circumlocution to get to those words.
Yeah, what I love about that poem is, in addition to just being really interesting sonically, and it's kind of a fun joke on one level too.
Yes.
It does sort of paint that, it really does suggest that narrative scene of like a person trying to order and, faced with the kind of difficulty of that. And yet, if you look at it a different way, here's the difficulty of that just being transformed into this more permanent thing than the burger you're going to eat. Now it's a poem and it has this life and this resonance. What I find so interesting about this book is, I kind of imagine you going through your life in this, and so much of it, I imagine the stutter is pathologized, and you're learning tricks to kind of get around it and so on. And then all of a sudden, fast forward, now you're in, a creative writing program of sorts, and you're trying to learn to be a poet. And of course, the thing you have to learn is defamiliarization. How do you make the language more strange? Yeah, when so much of probably your time has been spent before this trying to get away from the strangeness that kind of comes up in the language. And so what I find so interesting about Blurt is that it really sort of, in some way, reframes the stutter as a, you're almost like, that's almost the dream of the ancient Greeks, to the muse will deliver to them the strange language, the strange way of speaking that will be unusual and interesting and unique, and it will kind of almost, the poem will come from elsewhere, and there'll be kind of an uncontrollability to it, and you're just a conduit, in such a weird way, the book almost strangely realizes that in this kind of strangely secular medicalized manner, the dream of like the supernatural muse speaking through the poet and delivering this sound, this lyrical, like the sound poem that has all these qualities that are sublime in that manner. So to me, it's really interesting reversal of kind of not only how people normally talk about the stutter, as you say, or represent it, but also just the kind of, it's almost the inverse of a lot of the assumptions that people make about poetry and what it means to be a poet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's really wonderful. I've never really really thought about it in those ways. I think that, you know, what you said about the making language strange is really, you know, fascinating, because it was I mean, sometimes in a sense I like described it, I guess, writing this book as like an it's like an exorcism in a way, right? Where I mean, this, you know, I mean, stuttering is an obvious, like there's an avoidance of language, but simultaneously there's also there's a kind of obsession with it too. And I think that's something that I definitely was exploring in this book, right? That part of my existence where the obsessive aspects of being really drawn to words and their sounds, even though they're kind of a physicality and the way that they and the way that I speak them are socially and physically kind of, you know, painful. In I guess poetry acts as a kind of, you know, like that balm in a sense, because I guess I realized that aestheticizing the stutter, which has its own issues that I'm still dealing with, but I think at the time, realizing that I could aestheticize it and kind of, you know, find a home in that strangeness that you talk about, in the materiality of language and sound, was really comforting for me for a long time. That there was something in that the way that I speak had this kind of potentiality that was beyond that was beyond sort of my own symptoms.
Do you mind reading Chomp Set now, or excerpts from Chomp Set, and before we kind of get a little further into this,
Yeah, sure.
and maybe talk about some of your newer stuff?
Sure, sounds good. So this is from Chomp Set. I guess what I'll do is I'll read well, maybe I'll read just kind of, you know, 4 of them. So Chomp Set's Blubber Tongue. If you must have an idea, have a short-term idea, a Cocoa Puff, a two-step bluff, a fleeting rhyme, Broca's camel clutch, grappled thalamus flux, box tonsils fresh, black box, tongue scatter, suckle, polygon, syllable, collar pop, mullet, split end, leg lock, glottal, I get lip off, fresh, nugs, mouse milking, NASCAR, wrist flex, snorkeled mosh, dental furrow, jello shot, ease, Pantene. Coca-Cola tonic, krill, Gil, Baleen, Dream, Wrench, Kleenex, Smack, Baltic, Pyrex, Megahertz, Humpback, Kickback, Flex, Nukes, Flub, Blubber, Sexy, Plankton, Number. Foreman, Rill, Grill, Lisp, Dental, Whopper. Worcestershire, Scaffold, Larynx, Magma, Seed, Tart, Gruff, Volcanic, Ply, Canine, Cusp, Munch, Crunch, Rump, Gales, Lurk, Berserk, Cortex, Honey, Botox, Globs, Boom of Clavicles, Corn Silk, Lips, Blitz, as Molotov blisters, Tupperware slur, Celeb, Tex-Mex, Thunder Thigh, Aerobic, Gulag, Squeeze, Bottle, Gucci, Groin. Bent tendon, each papyrus fold, cackles, buzz, beatbox, Kizzlecum, Kizzlecum, shizzle, cadence, cavum, kinetic. All right, thanks.
Oh, that's so great. You know, you tell that story of with going with your buddies to the drive through and so on, and not like wanting that attention on the stutter and that those sorts of moments. And I'm curious to know, like, if it's been a very weird journey for you to where not only did this book get a lot of attention when it came out, but also even in your more recent work, like in the picture book you did about stuttering, I watched Ed Sheeran read that book the other day. Like, what a strange, journey that's kind of been, from maybe sort of almost trying to hide the stutter to, here's Ed Sheeran telling everyone about your stutter,
That's right.
in a manner of speaking. Like, how has that been? What's it been like? I guess it's an odd question, but
No, it's not no, it's a
it's a
good
big
question.
question.
I
But
think I think that in the beginning, as I said, it was, I think what just so like I was saying before, I think poetry allows I guess the poetry allows for me a solid, a kind of a solid, I guess, solidarity beyond how I feel about my own symptoms socially. So it allows me to exist in a space where I kind of feel like I'm producing something that is a useful intervention, at least I hope, into not only stuttering but also poetry and poetics. So in a strange sense, Blurt actually allowed me to I guess avoid talking about the more kind of personal aspects of stuttering and how it feels to stutter, because oftentimes it was just, I was in the room with poets, reading to poets who have who I think would listen to the work in a way that, you know, that we could talk about, as you were saying, sort of sound poetry, the materiality of language, the poetics of you know, of the body, and that was the and those moments for me where there's more aestheticization are, they're comforting for me. Um, and I remember this one time where I was, as I remember that I specifically asked, so usually I would say no to all of the reading, like, sorry, usually I would say yes to anybody that asked me to read anywhere. And a while ago, quite some time ago, I put a little caveat on that. So I would no longer read in like restaurants or cafes where there were kind of other things happening along with the poetry reading. And that was because for me, there was this kind of strange collision between how, you know, comfortable I felt as that reading as a poet who happens to stutter, as opposed to being seen as a stuttering poet. So that long answer brings me to the kids' book, which is very, very confrontational in a lot of ways. Like, for the first time in my life, I am talking to other people who stutter. I have, you know, friendships with people who stutter. I speak to kind of support groups for people and children who stutter. So my role, like, you know, pushing, I guess, 50, has changed quite substantially. And I think I'm definitely more ready for that, but it still is something that, you know, I struggle with on the level of comfort, right? You know, I'd still much rather I read to a group of poets and artists than talk to other stutterers. Although I've had some incredible experiences doing so, it's just a different set of concerns and a different, it's a different labor that's involved in both of them. So it's been a very kind of strange and intense ride, but I'm kind of glad that I started it in the way that I have, right? I think if I, like, I'm glad that the kind of poetry came before the other genres.
And you mentioned that a lot of your other work will be concerned in some way with ecology, and I'm curious to know if you see any connection kind of between a book like Blurt and, you know, maybe a book like Decomp, or do you see them as pretty distinct threads of your interests?
You know, it's difficult because I think that, you know, I mean, I think that there is always the concerns in my work. If I kind of look at what I've done so far, even if I'm not specifically talking about stuttering, I'm definitely talking about a lot of the issues that you know, you come out of stuttering. So I've always been interested in talking about ecology in that way, the, you know, organic matter, you know, um, I've always been interested in the body, in disfluency in general, right? So I think, I guess all of my work is always going to have those moments within it. So I think that, you know, even if it isn't explicitly about stuttering, it definitely, it definitely kind of, you know, uh, you know, the sort of, you know, I guess processes of stuttering and their connection to other aspects of the world are still really prominent.
Can you talk a bit about the process of writing decomp? Because that's another book that I find really fascinating in terms of how you constructed it. And I'm curious, you could talk again, especially for people who, you know, maybe listen to this later and are more in a creative writing class or something, kind of what you found. So if you could talk a little about the process of writing decomp, but also for both Billert and, you know, decomp and some of your other work, just kind of more generally what your process is, that, you know, in terms of how you approach writing creatively.
Mm-hmm. So with decomp, so my a friend of mine and also a poet, Stephen Collis, and I, we took copies of Darwin's Origin on the Species, and one summer we drove around our home province of British Columbia. And British Columbia is unique in the sense it has very distinct like biospheres that kind of produce their own microclimates. So there's the west, you know, there's the west, the coast of Vancouver Island. There's, you know, the kind of desert like conditions in the interior. There's, you know, the conditions in the north, et cetera, et cetera. So we kind of researched those distinctive biospheres and ecosystems, and then we drove to each one of them, and we tried to kind of, you know, find a poet who lived there, and they kind of, you know, guided us into the bush, and then we all just dropped off a couple copies of Darwin's book there. We left it open on random pages, and then we left. And then we went driving again the year after. So we let the books stay outside for a year, and then we returned to those places and we picked them up. And then from there, it became a process of collaboration between, I guess, what that particular ecosystem had to say about the book. How did it kind of, you know, like what it actually did to the pages and the text. So collaboration between that and then Steve and I. So it was a really, you know, fascinating, I guess, process of documentation and writing.
And then have you, when you have a more kind of normal process, like what do you find
Yes.
is the best way, the most productive way for you to approach that?
Yeah, so for me, I think I mean, I honestly have the same process every time for all my books. I collect as much material as possible. So for me, that's you know, determining what are the kinds of, you know, themes or ideas that I would like to explore within a book. and then I read about those ideas as much as I possibly can, and I collect as many sentences, words, phrases as I can. And then I put them all into a kind of massive Word document, and then I start to write. And that's basically how I've written every book so far.
I love the idea of collecting as much material as possible. I've heard different people, because whatever your process, whether you're literally like with a notepad writing down the words that are hard for you to say, or going through the dictionary and collecting them in that list-like manner, or dumping books in the woods and pick them up a year later, or even whether you're just doing research, and taking notes on your reading, or as you say, like, phrases that you hear or come up with that you just are noting down. Like I'll do something similar where I'll just do a lot of tests. Like I'll just test different narrative voices or something, or styles. Like I'm a bit of a magpie in that manner, and it sounds like you are as well, which is where you kind of want to collect things like a crow. What are the shiny things that are drawing your eye, and then start to sort of synthesize them. What I find interesting about that approach is it's a much more materialistic approach in a certain way, and yet it lets you get at these kind of more abstract ideas more easily in many respects.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like I don't think that I've ever like I was talking to my friend and poet Matt Rader the other day. We were chatting, and I had this real kind of nostalgia and almost that jealousy for the way that he often writes, which is essentially without any other materials. He just kind of, like he says, just goes on a hike, and sometimes he'll stop and just write these poems, right? That's not always how he does it, but that's definitely part of his process. And I mean, his poems are just fucking beautiful. And I don't think I've ever written a poem that way, ever. I've never just sat there with a notepad and written something. I've always been my process is always, as you described it, as that kind of, like a kind of crow or a magpie, just collecting all of these kinds of trinkets for the nest. But I do think that you're right in the sense it does allow me to still explore these larger abstract ideas, because there's just, I mean, for me, there's such an intimacy that's kind of, gained within that material, that I define myself taking from it, but also responding to it. So that's what I always find really kind of, fascinating about it as well.
Prior to going to Calgary and meeting you and all the people there and getting connected with that whole scene, my big influence was Dennis Cooley, and he always talked about he called mining the site, which is very much the same sort of process. You find a site that you find interesting, you just keep generating and mining and doing research and things like this. And but I do know people who claim to write in the way you say Matt writes, but honestly, I don't believe them. Like, I think they're just doing that same process invisibly, and just not concretizing it personally. I think it's just the same process probably, but I mean, I don't know. But my suspicion is really they're doing something like the same process, but just not really taking the notes. It's just kind of going into their memory banks or what have you.
I suspect as much as well. Yes. Yeah. I definitely suspect as much. I think that there's just, I mean, yeah, I don't know how you would do it otherwise if you're not accessing yet some kind of bank of concerns and, you know, books you read, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Do you find when you do a picture book, what's that like? How is that different, or is it the same
Oh,
process?
it's wild. Doing picture books are very difficult. I think it's the most challenging genre that I've ever experienced, right? Um, the amount of the amount of like the mechanics of it, I get really excited by it, but it's also so difficult because for me at least, you know, I'm still considering the sound, I'm still considering the image, I'm still trying to sneak in aspects of the poetry and poetics to kind of worm their ways into child's brains, right? Uh, but then at the same time, you have to consider a narrative, but a very specific type of narrative where there should be some type of a lesson, right? So there has to be a conflict and a lesson. And when you combine all of those things, but also you're combining them in these kind of very minimalist structures, simultaneously you're considering the artist and the visual aspect of what should be spoken or not spoken, what should be kind of visually described and not textually described, is a super complex genre. I love it, but it's very challenging.
I think it's one of those genres that seems easy to people because they
It
look at it and they
does,
think,
yeah.
poetry is often like this too. They look at it and they think, oh well, there's not that many words. But at least with poetry, people have the assumption that like there's that cultural idea the poet has some, great wisdom. Whereas I don't know if like you don't have the same like idea of like Lord Byron in the Tower attaching themselves to picture book writers, but it does have even more of that. um, it's not quite a constraint, but it kind of is a constraint, really. And you only have so many
Mhm.
pages, and you only have so many words that you can really have on a page. Plus, there's the audience comprehension to consider, and you
Mhm.
have the twin audiences of the person reading the book, often to the
Yes.
person. Like it's a very it's a really interesting form, and I've tried my hand at it a few times unsuccessfully, and I keep trying to figure out what's the secret sauce there. Camilla's got a question here, or has something to say. Can you jump in there?
Oh yeah, here it is.
Oh, sorry.
Um,
She's having a
that's okay. I
mic
see it
problem.
in the chat there. Jordan, for your writings you shared in collecting materials to get started for the body and themes, etc. I'm curious, how do you normally finalize a book or a poem, or or how you would say that it is complete and it is concrete? Yeah, okay, that's a great question. It's a tough situation. I think for me, to be honest, I don't really have like a technical answer to that. Students ask me that a lot in my creative writing the classes, and I mean, for me, it's just sorry for the answer, but it's always just been a feeling. Um, and I think that I've always had a sense of when things are done. Oftentimes it's like a physical sensation. Like I remember writing the ending to the kids book, like the last line, the last couple lines, and uh, I physically had a sense of relief and excitement, and that's usually when I know. Um, but other than that, I don't have a particular formula. Um, it just it just feels complete. Um, the one thing that maybe I would also suggest is I I tend to have people read my work a lot. Friends. So often those discussions are very helpful in terms of where to stop, where to end.
I find it's an especially good question for people like I think you and I, who are very iterative in their process, and who maybe, I don't know, speaking for me at least, I can be very perfectionist about things. And the best answer I've come up with is I feel like I'm done when I'm just moving things around and I'm not really making it better or worse anymore.
Yeah,
At least if I'm making it worse,
yeah.
I know I can go back and try to make it better. But if I'm just moving things around and it's not really changing, at that point, I just don't know what else I could do. And
yeah, I agree with that. I agree. Going back to what you said about like the special sauce of children's literature, because I have 2 more books coming out with the same press over the next couple years, and I'm kind of working on another one right now. And what's interesting to me, I think what I found is the less pedantic I am, and the more that I'm accessing that kind of childhood imagination, right? That seems to be when things work, right? Where I'm not writing the book as an adult. I obviously am, but I think I'm more and more conscious of kind of tapping into that sort of childhood sense of kind of wonder and curiosity, and that's often how I write. I kind of access this weird part of my brain that imagines myself in those particular landscapes and spaces, and how I would be processing it and describing it, right? Because I often find in the first drafts I'm writing as an adult sometimes, and it just comes across as really I don't know the right word for it, but it's really sort of a telegraphed, and I never want to do that. Like, I always want to kind of trust children and trust their capacity to kind of think through really difficult issues. Because I think, as you know, having children, even though they're not able to articulate perhaps what they're going through, or these kinds of big abstract ideas, there is definitely something going on in there, which is, I think, a lot of the time beyond my understanding, at least. And I do see a glimpse of that in my children all the time. So I really try to when I write kids' books, I try to kind of write as a child, but I'm not writing for children, if that makes sense.
Sure. Almost like trying to just write for your friend who is also a child in a sort of strange way, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for talking to me and talking to us and answering some questions, and appreciate all those words. And I think people will really find something really useful there in terms of thinking about their own process and working, especially in some of those genres like poetry and picture books and fiction in that manner. And thanks again. Thanks so much for making the time, Jordan.
Oh, of course, I really appreciate the time. It was good to chat and to see you again.